Yeah.
And that's like really anything. You're not going to watch or listen or learn anything from something that you're not actually interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said earlier on, it needs to be pleasurable.
Yeah.
No matter fiction, non-fiction, you need to be enjoying it.
You need to enjoy it.
If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to read it. You can't force yourself to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
That's what school made us do, and we're not teenagers anymore in school.
Yeah.
So breaking it up into smaller, more achievable, digestible goals was something that I found worked for me.
Yeah.
I know Bob from...
Did you know Bill Gates for decades held a Think Week where he consumes 112 books in a week?
You're listening to the Marketing Mentors podcast with the legendary Linda and, of course, me, Tasha, brought to you by RedPandas Digital. And I am so stoked to be joined with you again, Linda, this year in 2023. It's been an incredible start to the year. I know it's been everyone just running around, getting things sorted and getting to a flow of the new space, which has been really, really exciting. And really excited to talk about what we're talking about today.
Me too. I'm so stoked to be back. It feels like we were off podcasting for a long time.
Yes.
Feels like our last one was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Mind you, the last one was with Elena. So that's probably why for me it feels like so long ago.
Yeah, but still has, lots of changes in the new year and all that type of stuff. But with that said, one thing that in this new year I've been trying my hardest to keep myself accountable to is, and along the lines of what you were saying before, is reading and being more active in what I want to do with my reading and some goals around reading. And if you didn't pick up on the name of this episode, leaders are readers. And so both Linda and I are leaders here at RedPandas Digital. And one thing that our leader, Moby, has been, really leading by example in the last at least 6 to 12 months is this active, proactive reading. What are we reading? What are we learning? What are we sharing? And that growth mindset around let's be using that part of our brain that let's be honest, we probably don't use that much since like high school. And that's probably because high school absolutely butchered us into reading books that we didn't want to read.
True.
Whereas now as adults, we're, finding this new love and new passion for reading.
Yeah, and reading things that we actually want to read.
So with that said, Linda, I'm really keen for us to talk about the impact of reading on us as leaders within the organisation. Like I said before, Moby's really created this culture of reading within the business. And, we've started a book club, which is a really, it's a low-key social space for us just to talk about the books we're reading and takeaways. Now, it's not the traditional, go to the library, everyone sit in a circle. Did you read chapter 1? No, it's definitely not that. It's this informal conversation around, hey, what are you reading? What are some takeaways? How are you applying that in your professional and, personal space? So really today I feel like we're going to make this a bit of an informal book club around, what we've read in the last couple of months or weeks at least and how it's impacting us as leaders here at RedPandas.
And with the book club as well, the way it's been set up has really on purpose been set up in a way where we are trying to make it super informal so that people don't feel pressured that they need to read and it becomes a chore and they have to show up and add value. You can in fact show up to the book club not having done your reading as you maybe had planned to, but can still sit there and listen to what other people are reading and are teaching to the group. And that's a really important, and that's still really important as well because it helps create that culture where we all are learning either directly or indirectly, whether it's from directly reading or indirectly through our colleagues. And I think that's the really cool part about it. For us, it's just a Slack channel, which we created called Book Club.
Yeah. Do you remember Book Club back in the day at school though?
No,
and
I was never a part of it, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, you didn't get,
I wasn't
it was
a
Book
reader
Club.
back
You
in
got
the day.
the little catalogue and it had all the books on it and you got to circle the book you wanted and you had to pay and it would, you guys are with me. Oh man, I used to love, it was Scholastic and stuff.
Okay, I feel like I kind of remember.
Yeah, this is what I mean. The education system here shoves books down our throats at such a young age for so long. Yeah. And then in high school as well, how many books did you have to read in English or English Advanced? Man, and Spark Notes because you couldn't read the whole thing.
I came first in general English, just saying.
Oh, that and the top 200 tennis player. Wow, Linda, go on.
That doesn't need to be on record.
Yeah, no, it's on the record now.
Anyway.
Okay, back to reading. So I think what we're trying to get across is that reading is hugely, not only for our own, hugely beneficial, not only for our own mental growth and cognition, but also just the impact of how it affects us every day in the way we talk and handle ourselves and speak with our team. And if we have a book club or whatever you want to call it, like a session where you talk about things that you've read, I feel like is just helping really reinforce the stuff that you are picking up in this book.
And so naturally here we are talking about books that are more around like self-help, if you will, or
professional development,
things that are to do with the industry in which you're working in. Of course, there's the other side of book reading as well, like what you enjoy typically, T, right?
So I've always been a big fan of fiction books. They're the ones that really kind of make your imagination do the work.
Yeah.
And I love them. And I feel like you can get lost in a book. It's a real intimate experience for you and your mind. Like no one else can tell you how something's meant to look. It was a big transition, still is, for me to really push myself to read non-fiction books.
Right.
I bought myself like 3 books last year. I read 1, which I'm not super proud to say, but I got through 1, which is better than the none the previous year. And this year, it's mid-February and I've already read 1 professional development book, which I'm very proud of myself. And that one was nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
One of the ones I bought last year that I didn't get around to reading. So I read that this year, absolutely loved it. And I saw so many takeaways and learnings that I have already applied into my professional life and personal.
Yeah.
And I can't recommend it more to literally anyone and everyone. If you use words to talk, which people do, everyone does, I recommend it. I think everyone should learn something about nonviolent communication. And it's funny because nonviolent sounds like, it's for people that are aggressive or don't know how to have gentle conversations, but it's so much more than that. It's learning how to be, lead with empathy. So really understanding where someone's coming from before you make any assumptions as to why they might be reacting a certain way or saying certain things, questioning yourself to say, why did I choose those words to express what I'm feeling or what I'm trying to say? What responses am I hoping to get out of someone when I share the information that I'm sharing?
Yeah.
How do I want them to react? It's a lot of like inner critical reflection around the words that you're saying.
Did you used to do that prior?
No, God, no.
Yeah, okay.
I would just hear things and, blow up or hear things and take them offensively.
Yeah.
Because, and let's be real, sometimes people say things and they mean to be offensive. Sometimes people say things and they don't mean to be offensive.
Yeah.
And it's our egos, it's the way we respond and we receive things that, these words that can trigger these things within us. So what I really, really liked about it was particularly, I think one of the first examples I remember writing down was observe, don't assume. Perfect example is you got a soccer player. I could sit here and say, that soccer player is shit. That's a huge, huge assumption.
Yeah.
That he's a shit soccer player. What would be better, what was more articulate is that soccer player has been in the team for 5 years and he's only ever scored 1 goal.
Right. Okay. More factual.
It's more factual.
Less subjective.
It's less exactly objective. It's more. It's less assumptive.
Yep.
And it is just an observation. And I'm letting someone else come to the conclusion they want to come to, but I'm using the words in a way that are being observational and not assumptional.
Right.
Which is really, it's really interesting. And like, there's other ways you can apply it. That's the one that stuck out the most for me. And it's there's a big emotion in the book around what needs of a person aren't being met as to why they sometimes react in certain ways.
What do you mean by that?
So, for example, my husband comes home of an afternoon and he goes straight to sit down on the lounge and watch the TV. And then I get upset with him for doing that. And I'm thinking, I've got, washing to be done and food to be cooked and all these things going on. And it's like, why am I'm getting upset because there's a need within me that hasn't been met.
Yeah.
And he's just sat down. So as opposed to, blowing up and just assuming that he doesn't know about all these things, because let's be real, sometimes men don't really realize all this stuff until they're told. But
Jab.
Yeah, 100%. But it's just the way of communicating that to him and saying, look, I've got a need as well. When you come home, I need support with doing these things. And I need you to understand that and help me with them, or not so much as help, but just be present and contribute. And contribute. That's it. So it's when you feel angry, when you feel triggered by something, what need of yours is not being met.
I love that. And it resonates with something that I have tried to live by for a very long time. And that's when I'm experiencing like anger, like an emotion like anger or frustration, something that's not so nice. And maybe it's to do with a partner, maybe it's to do with family, a colleague, whatever it is. Typically years ago, and I would like to think I'm quite like good at this now, but years ago I would say you
Yeah.
And I'd not
put it on them.
Yeah, I'd not reflect on my own emotions, but I
100%.
would put it on them. And rather than say, you did this, X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
instead now I say, I feel X, Y, and Z.
That's literally what the book talks about. There's like
Yeah.
a whole I think there's a whole few chapters
Yeah.
about that. And it's removing the responsibility of your feelings from someone else. So a typical one, I see it all the time in parenting. And now I have a 2-year-old that's learning a lot about emotions.
Yeah.
She does something that maybe, I don't like, or I don't want her to throw her dummy on the ground, let's say. Oh, baby, that you make mummy sad when you throw your dummy on the ground. That's like the perfect example of teaching a child that her actions are responsible for my feelings.
Yeah.
And I know we're getting deep here, but like this is what I mean by words and communication.
Yeah.
We don't have to tell our children that what they're doing is making me sad. Oh, another one. When your kids don't get the grades that you want them to get.
Yeah.
This happened to us as kids for sure.
Yeah.
Your parents say, oh, you're making me very disappointed. You're making me very sad that you're not achieving higher results. It's like, whoa. And then you get this huge conflict because you're like, I'm not making my parents happy. It's not your responsibility to make your parents happy.
Yeah.
It's not your responsibility to make your team happy either.
That actually resonates with a book that I read recently, The Courage to Be Disliked.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that just really talks about learning to be okay with the fact that you have to be selfish in order to be happy and to be driven by things in life in a positive way.
Yep.
And it actually referenced the same example where it says that's very same thing where, your parents are unhappy with the career path that you've chosen.
Yep.
And so you almost are changing career paths for them as opposed to yourself. And that might make them happy, but fundamentally you're never going to feel happy. You're never going to feel fulfilled because you are meeting someone else's emotions rather than your own.
What needs are being met.
Exactly.
Not your own. So it's all so my key takeaways of nonviolent communication was definitely, the words are given as gifts, not attacks. So when you receive words as gifts,
I like that. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what someone says to you, it's a gift, and it's a gift for you to do what you want with it, unpack it. Normally when someone's angry at you, it's really more they're angry at themselves for something. Let's be real. And they're hurting for something. There's a need that they've got that's not being met. So this book takes you through multiple levels of nonviolent communication. So being able to just identify it, being able to use it and identifying it, and then getting to a point where you're just constantly thinking about someone else's words and you're just reacting the way that needs to be reacted to keep the situation calm and, manageable. Yeah. He actually says in the book, anger is not an option. Like anger shouldn't even be a thing that happens. He's never angry. Yeah. Obviously, he's got 2 or 3 kids I think he talks about, and I can reference this book in our show notes. Obviously, he's going to get angry at random stuff, but it's this idea of when you're angry.
Idea that anger is just a tool to be able to try and communicate what you want.
Exactly, and it's not.
And it's
not though.
You shouldn't be using anger as the tool because it's unhealthy.
Exactly. No. Yeah. Spot on. So that's something that I really enjoyed doing the last 6 weeks.
I love books like that. That's for me.
That's
I don't usually
list next reading.
Oh, you think I need it?
No,
I'm joking.
You just enjoy it. You enjoy that stuff.
I love
so
this.
I think you'd like it.
I can't do fiction personally. I feel like I have to read something where it's psychologically based, like it's about humans, so that way I can read it and actually go away and use it in all my interpersonal relationships.
Well, that's the thing. I think fiction versus non-fiction are two different. There's two different, very different objectives. Yeah. When you pick up a non-fiction book, that's what you're hoping for. Some key, tangible takeaways, shifts in your life, your professional life, something that's going to help you grow, right? Whereas when I go and read a fiction book, I'm not after growth. Yeah. I'm after my mind to be entertained.
Oh, see, I find that hard. I mean? Personally, I'm like, Netflix. If I'm gonna go and imagine, I can't get into it as much as I've tried. You
can't imagine with Netflix though, Linda. They're just showing it to you. They're feeding it to you. Do you know what I mean? Have you? We're not going to get into the type of fiction books that I like to read, but trust me, they let you use your imagination. No, 50 Shades, please, PG. Anyway, so what about yourself, Linda? I've just finished reading Nonviolent Communication. Yeah. What are you reading, or what have you just read that you want to share with us?
A lot of my books lately have unintentionally been around stoicism. Okay. So I just finished The Courage to Be Disliked, which I mentioned. Nice. And then I've started Courage is Calling, which is very, very similar. It's based on the fact that we we have unlimited and endless opportunities to be courageous every single day, but yet it's just still something that is so rare within people and something that we rarely see within people because we're afraid.
Yeah.
And really what leads that is fear, right? It's fear driven. And, I guess it's easier in theory or in practice really to not go against the status quo and not be voicing an opinion that might be very different to everybody else's. And we often as humans choose the easier path, and it really just challenges that. And it's really interesting because it looks at it throughout history where we see when people have really been courageous and real growth and amazing things for the universe has happened. And although it's, it gives examples on a larger scale like that, for me, I more look at it as in daily things that I can do. And it's helping me kind of just question decisions that I make, holding back on a particular opinion when I really should be voicing it because it is for the betterment of people, 100%. For example. And so I love things like that, like books that I can read that help me with my interpersonal relationships, help me in a work setting, with my friends, with my family, like anything that's psychologically kind of backed. I love those type of books.
And I love talking to you about them because then I don't have to read them. And Linda just tells me how to be nicer and have more courage. No, to be real, in the last few years we've worked with each other, I think a lot of that has definitely come out in just, the what do we have here? The colleague to colleague relationship mentoring advice that we give each other. Yeah. Is obviously you've picked up on these things in your years of reading and you've shared them with me. I've always struggled to kind of get into that professional development reading space. I prefer my courses and whatnot. Yeah. But like I said, this year I've kind of given myself a bit of a goal. I'd love to do a book a month. I definitely managed that in January. Yeah. I'm not quite on track for Feb. I'm currently reading Ego's the Enemy. Yeah. And so far, so good.
We're reading the same author.
Yeah, that's right. And then next, Elena is reading The Happiness Trap, I believe. Okay. Which sounds really interesting as well. So there's just so many books that I want to read. And I'm very conscious of not trying to read too quickly. Personally, I can't. It's very hard to find the time, let's be honest. But I don't want to read too quickly because I don't feel like I'm absorbing things. Right. But with that said, we do have a couple of takeaways for anyone that feels the same way. They want to start reading, but maybe they're struggling to find the time or they're making up some excuses and when I say making up excuses, it's not a judgment. We all do it. I do it. I literally just said trying to find the time. Like that's an excuse and it is what it is, but it's all good. How can we get through that? One thing that I found worked for me in January with nonviolent communication was I divided the book up into the days of the month. So there was 30 days in the month and I divided it up into how many days I had to get, how many pages of the book I had to get through a day to make sure I met my quota of the whole book in the month. Yeah. I finished the book in the first week of February because I didn't meet my daily quota every day. And that's, it happens. Yeah. But I still finished it within a week of telling myself I wanted to finish it. Yeah. And I literally sat there for 10 minutes and worked through 10 pages sticky note, 10 pages sticky note. And I wrote things like, you have to read to here. You're up to here. Keep going.
I love that.
Little random notes to myself. And it worked. It did work. It broke it down into just much more achievable goals.
So do you like that method? Do you think long term that will work for you?
So far it's working. But, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. I think it does depend on the book itself. What am I learning? What am I taking away? How applicable is it to me in my life? Yeah. And that's really anything. You're not going to watch or listen or learn anything from something that you're not actually interested in. And like you said earlier on, it needs to be pleasurable. Yeah. No matter fiction, non-fiction, you need to be enjoying it.
You need to enjoy it.
If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to read it. You can't force yourself to do something you don't want to do. Yeah. That's what school made us do. And we're not teenagers anymore in school. Yeah. So breaking it up into smaller, more achievable, digestible goals was something that I've found worked for me. Yeah. I know Bob from Impact. Yep. He does set time every day. So he sets, I think it's an hour. Yeah. Which is really cool. I'm sure I could find an hour, but he sets an hour a day aside to read. And so he's constantly reading and he's making sure he's keeping his mind sharp. And I actually remember when he was here, anything we mentioned about local knowledge, he was really quick to whip out his phone and do some Google searching and reading up on it.
Right.
So he's built himself this culture
he's trained
of
that muscle.
Yeah, like he's so trained on it that he's just constantly reading about things and building this encyclopedia of knowledge in his head.
I'd be curious to know what time of the day he schedules that time aside, because
I think
for
he
me,
said it was in the morning from memory.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Because I'm trying this new thing out. So for me, I struggle to keep up with reading when I'm working, particularly long hours.
Yep.
It's the first thing for me that I drop off the priority list, which is
You work
super
long
bad.
hours? What are you talking about? At RedPandas?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
So like we just had our holidays, right? We had a
Yep.
break, and I was reading consistently and built that
Yeah.
habit, and I was really happy with
That's
my
why
efforts.
January was so good.
Yeah. And then as soon as we went back to work, it's
Yeah.
just really dropped off for me, and I'm not keeping it consistent. But one thing that I'm trying to do is, and I can't even remember what book that I read this from, but I'm trying to now keep my mornings for input and my evenings for output.
Yep.
And so schedule that time in the morning for personal growth. So keeping my mornings for things like working out, journaling, reading, anything that helps me personally grow.
Yeah.
And then the evenings, the stuff for output, and things like, Netflix and that sort of stuff, keeping that towards the evenings. So I'm trialing that right now, and just for now it's working. So I'm happy, but you're right. I did have to create that additional time in the morning because I already had that routine. Just reading wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And I found that when I didn't have a set time, or I hadn't had a set time, in January, early Feb, it just was that thing that was getting dropped off. So I would say that is definitely a takeaway.
Yeah.
You need to have that set time to read. Otherwise, if you don't and you just have it as an ad hoc type activity that you fit in, it just, it doesn't get prioritized.
When you're busy.
Yeah.
And everyone's busy.
Yeah.
Everyone's always busy. So
I mean, that classic excuse of I just don't have enough time. Well, you do have enough time. You have the same amount of time as everybody else in the day.
Yeah.
But the real issue there is that you're not prioritizing that task, and other things are being prioritized over reading.
I'll always say people make time for the things they care about.
Yeah.
And if you care about reading and you really truly want to hit that one book a month, like I'm trying to, I'm trying to, then you will make that time. You'll do what you need to in the day to make that time. One last thing I'd love to share with everyone is, obviously I'm reading Ego is the Enemy at the moment. Linda said she's reading
Courage is Calling.
Courage is Calling. And, if you guys are interested in, more books, what we'll do is we'll link to RedPandas' top 12 books we recommended to our clients last year. We'll link it to the show notes for this one, because there's so much out there, and we'd love to hear about what you guys are reading and what you're thinking about it, how you're applying things. Like, let's turn, maybe we get a segment of the podcast in the new year about like a little mini book club, what's been happening when we finish and start new books, just so that we can, again, keep each other accountable to what we're reading, and anyone that's listening along as well.
I love it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Linda, welcome back.
Thanks, and you.
Looking forward to the next one.
See you guys.